Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm here tonight with Bryan Doughty from New London Board of Education member. And before we get to talking about all things related to New London education, I wanted to mention to people that Brigade was recently featured on the latest season of Ugly Delicious. And I didn't know David Chang had been in New London making food for our students, but we're kind of fans of the show, and we're very pleasantly surprised to see Winthrop School featured. So if you get a chance, watch the episode. Anyway, welcome, Bryan.
Thank you, Rana. Good evening.
And I guess the one other announcement to start with is that our St. Patrick's Day parade in New London has been postponed indefinitely due to, coronavirus scares.
We're going to have to turn the city green another day.
We will. So I guess that's actually the first question I'll ask you, Bryan, is I know that the governor declared a state of emergency and groups bigger than 100 are discouraged. How is this going to impact our schools?
Sure. So I'll start with the first thing. You mentioned Brigade. And tomorrow night, Wednesday, we have a monthly Brigade meal, community meal, and that's at 5 p.m. And our district's been, I think, quite proactive in attempting to deal with COVID-19 or coronavirus. That's still going to happen tomorrow night. One of the small things we're doing for that meal is it's going to be to-go only. So it will still happen, but you come and grab your food and you can go. I know down the way you have some questions about some school building things, but there's also a presentation about Benny Dover. We're redoing that school. It's called the South Campus. That's the nickname. The high school is the North Campus. But at 5:30 up in the media lab, there's also a presentation with pictures and maybe models. I'm not sure. I haven't seen exactly what they're doing.
So people can grab their food to go and then go to the meeting.
Yeah, or go to the meeting and then come downstairs. But your question was really about what are we doing for the schools. I'm going to kind of read some things here. For our school system, I believe it just went out really few minutes ago.
Okay, so we have breaking news here.
Yes,
you heard it here.
We're like
first,
CNN,
probably.
MSNBC, and Fox News, all rolled into one.
Hopefully we're a bit more rational
Sure.
than some of them, especially all of them rolled into one.
That would be very crazy. But our school district has been quite proactive in communicating, at least to the Board of Ed, what's going on. We've sent out some different letters to parents about if your child's sick, take them here, do that, do this. So we're actually not going to be changing anything right now, except for some trips and different things will be canceled moving forward. So effective immediately at this time, all school and district offices remain open in regular session for students and staff. So nothing's going to change there. Parent-teacher conferences are this Friday. Nothing changes there. I mentioned the community meal. That's still happening. We also have a human trafficking training, which is scheduled for Friday for parents, and that's still happening. Enrichment anything that's planned where you may have a group of 100 people will be canceled between March 11th and April 30th. So we have some field trips planned. If they're in state or out of the state, those will not be happening. You may or may not have heard the CIAC, the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Commission. Something.
Conference?
I don't know. It's all of the state of Connecticut. They actually canceled any winter sport that has not concluded, has been ended as of today. So I believe wrestling concluded, but I don't think basketball has concluded, and some of the other sports. They haven't made a determination on the spring yet, whether those sports will be happening or not. I don't know exactly when they start. I'm sure as soon as the winter sports end, there's training for the spring sports, but I don't know where we are. One of the big things for our district, and I think this will happen regionally, is we don't have any diagnosed COVID-19 people, students or anyone. But if that does happen, I would anticipate probably the schools will close for a period of time.
Right now, the couple of confirmed cases in the state are not in this region.
No, they're not in this region. I would say Region 14, school district Region 14, which is the Bethlehem area, they're actually closed until March 15th. I believe that was announced today, and they're doing a deep cleaning with that type of stuff.
Yeah, soap, water, and alcohol.
And alcohol, pure alcohol. I guess you have to find it. But they're closing to clean. I don't believe they actually had a student who contracted COVID-19. I think it was a friend of the student or something like that. But I think you take precautions because I was talking to your husband before this. There's a lot of unknowns. You know, what is the incubation period? I've heard that if you are afflicted with this virus, you could get better in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It seems to be an indeterminate amount of time. But I think we all, like the regular flu, you take precautions, you wash your hands.
Sure.
I mean, 30 seconds seems like an eternity, but that's what we all
But
hear
the
we should do.
positive side is that everyone is sharing all these great songs to wash your hands.
Yeah.
to.
What I do wonder is, were we not washing our hands before?
Not for 20 to 30 seconds, I don't think.
And I hope people, especially for the schools and for work also, if you are sick, don't go to work. I know for a lot of people it's a monetary thing, and you have to go to work. But I think the best thing is I think the advice of most doctors is stay home if you can. But I think you have to. And if you have a child that's feverish, vomiting, diarrhea, that type of thing, please don't send them into school. I think that's the advice you'd get anyways, even without this issue.
And honestly, if there are flus around or other illnesses, you really don't want other sick kids, because once your immune system is down, you're vulnerable to so many other things.
Yeah, it's gonna. If you're able to stay away, do it. I know. If you followed some of the news recently, like Stanford, I believe, is closed. Harvard closed. I'm an Ohio State graduate. Ohio State announced last night or this morning they're closing classes or closing down the campus, I think, through the end of the month. Maybe longer, and it's in addition to not just Ohio State, but the entire Ohio State group. You know, like we have UConn, Eastern Point, all those. It's the entire UConn or Ohio State group. So I actually would anticipate more colleges closing down. In my opinion, with spring break happening, the kids go away. We don't know where they go, and they would all be coming back with who knows what.
Yeah.
So in a sense, you could take advantage and maybe close your school for 2 weeks, one that wouldn't affect classes, and then an additional week, and hopefully stay healthy. But it's a little scary because we don't know if we're increasing or decreasing, and in the news they say we don't have enough tests. So how many people are we testing? I know when the governor had his press conference today, I was surprised the amount of tests we have. I think they were saying they could only do 60 a day, but we haven't gotten even 60 tests in, which is, it just seems, it's hard to fathom that we actually have to hire more people to process tests.
Yeah. And one point I heard in New York City, there's been discussion of, why they don't want to close schools. And I think it's the case in many communities like New London that there are kids who depend on coming to school to get lunch every day. And there are parents who don't have a plan B for childcare.
Sure. In our community, we're a magnet district, so it's a little different. But within the New London community, we're on the poorer side, to be blunt. And a lot of our kids, their safe zone, it's the schools every day, and they get a small breakfast, they get lunch, and they get a snack dinner type of thing. I know we're in discussions to try to continue that outside of the community and maybe do a to-go type of thing like the community meal. I'm not sure that's all finalized yet, but it's important. If we happen to close, our students will still have those needs, and we have to try to find a way to address them. It'll be a little different during that if we are closed. It would be just New London kids. I don't think someone from Stonington is going to come here for lunch.
Right.
So we're going to have to make adjustments, but and that gets back to Brigade. I mean, I'd like to say something kind of fun about Brigade.
Sure.
I think they've been in the district 3 years, and it's not a statistics, but kind of a neat thing that they came and did it. Well, before I was on the Board of Ed, they did a presentation, and the person in charge said that no child who's gone to New London Public Schools up to third grade has had a processed chicken nugget. It's all been
Wow.
fresh chicken, which I thought was really
Yeah.
kind of cool. Now the fourth grade through 12th, that's a different story. But it's kind of neat, and I think the kids like the program. For those who don't know, they use all fresh ingredients. They cut up all their cantaloupe. They do kale. They do stuff that I'm not sure you and I would eat. But they give it a shot, and the kids are really quite honest. If they don't like something, they'll let you know, and they might either have to change it if they're going to have it again, or maybe they don't go there again. Go ahead.
Well, it's really funny because I did watch the episode of
Yeah.
Ugly Delicious, not knowing ahead of time that they were featured as part of this episode on feeding kids. And part of it was, Dan Justy warning David Chang, you could be doing all of this and all the kids will tell you that they hate it.
And they're really honest. They're not like us adults who might say, I'm not sure this is the best food I've ever had. They'll just say, this sucks. And that's what they'll tell you. But it is a neat program. And I know we're on Thinking Green. With those programs, we have 5 schools that serve food. Two of the other ones, they have it delivered, or the high school campuses are attached, so it's one cafeteria for the 2 schools. But we do take the food scraps and we bring it, or the Ciccarelli Pig Farm comes and picks them up, and that program seemed to work out quite well because when you're doing fresh food, you're not going to use it all. I don't know anybody who
Right.
eats cantaloupe skins.
Right.
Maybe you do.
The skins are going to go somewhere anyway, so they're being disposed of here on site, and we're not getting frozen stuff for
Right.
pre-processed.
Right, and when you do have all fresh stuff, you're going to have a byproduct, whether it be seeds or if you have lettuce, the bottom part of the lettuce you don't eat or whatever. You have lots of byproducts that we send over to Ciccarelli, and we save a little bit of money on hauling fees and different things for the city of New London, which is a positive. And I think it's good for the environment. I know the pigs like it. I just know they don't like hot dogs apparently.
Oh, well, people probably know that your history with the Solid Waste
Sure.
Task Force, and it's kind of shocking when you think about how much of our trash stream is food leftovers.
Yeah, it's a huge amount. I want to say it was 35%. I'm not sure that sounds about right, around that area. The interesting thing is if you have food byproduct, 80% of it is water. So or a lot of cities and towns, they choose to move water around. It doesn't make much sense, but it's what we do. And then we burn it.
Yeah. It doesn't, well, in general, it kind of makes me crazy. I would love to be an efficiency expert.
Sure.
Let's get quality of life and good practices so that we can use the minimum amount of resources we need to get
Sure.
what we need. And, turning something that is potentially a resource like pig food into a problem, which is waste, just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
No, and I think if the school district or the city can partner with different people who can maybe use things that we feel are trash, but someone else feels is a treasure. Maybe that's not a good analogy, but I think there's a lot of things. Like recycling. This may be not valuable to me, but it could be valuable to some other company. And even if you're composting in your backyard, there's leaves or something you may not have will be more valuable to you
Sure.
versus me. And really the key for all that stuff is the less we use, the better. The problem is we don't. You go and buy a product. Our kids are a little older now, but I used to say, you buy a dollhouse and then it takes you an hour to unpack it because there's little clips and there's cardboard and there's metal things and then you get it out and this huge box was like a little dollhouse this big. And I don't think we need all that stuff, but I'm not a packer. So.
Yeah, well, I think that is one of the consequences of so much of our purchasing being done online.
Sure. Yeah, it's ideally if you could ship a product in the kind of in its own packaging, except when we order from Amazon, which a lot of us love.
Yeah.
You,
I've been trying to stay away from it recently. They've gotten such bad press.
well, if we're all quarantined, we might have to go there more to order our
We
food.
might.
But they tend to put in those little bubble wraps and then something else, and it annoys me to no end when you order something that's in a box and then you get it in a box.
Yeah.
You could have shipped it in the box. But
Yeah. Not in the box, in the box.
Right. It doesn't make sense. I also use the analogy, I wanted to go buy chicken, and I just wanted to get a piece of chicken, and they used to wrap it in a little bag type of thing, paper, and then you could burn it or do whatever you wanted to or compost it. And now you go and you get your chicken, and you get the little diaper underneath, and then you get the little styrofoam thing, and then you get the plastic wrap, and then you get the sticker on top. Now, we don't get the bag at the end of the grocery trip
Right.
anymore, but we do get all that other stuff, which, what do you do with it? You throw it away. I mean, the upside is my garbage weighs like a pound because it's just wrappers and different things. But I really wish we could use less, but it's a tough.
Yeah. Well, I think it's beyond the point that individuals can just do it on our own.
Sure.
It's our systems are not in place to
Yeah,
do it otherwise.
I would agree with you, but I do think we can lead by example. We don't have to do things. I'm a big fan of, in the city of New London, if we have a city building, well, it should be the model. We shouldn't drive by a blue recycling cart or bin and see sticks sticking out of it, because we don't recycle sticks. It's a different thing, but we tend not to lead by example. And I know you have on here recycling, and one of the newer projects I mentioned before, what I'd like to do, or I'm working on doing, SCURA. I'm not going to try to say what there's the Southern Connecticut Regional Resource Recovery Authority.
Something like
Something
that.
like that. I'm
That's
pretty
very
close.
close. You might be missing one R, but I'm not even sure. You might be perfect.
We're good.
Yeah.
But the school district, I contacted them, and I wanted to get permission to do this idea from SCURA first, and then I'd ask the school district what they thought, figuring if I already had it paid for, they'd have to say yes. And
Good
so,
strategy.
yeah, I went to the SCURA, and in our school district we have about 1,000 rooms, which means we have about 1,000 little blue bins, and it makes no sense to me that we don't have instructions above the recycling bin. So people just put whatever they think should be recycled in there. So when you get a Dunkin' Donuts cup, which is not recyclable, people put it in the container. So I asked David Aldridge from SCURA, if I designed a poster, would you print a poster for every room in the entire school district? And he said, sure, I'll pay for it.
Well.
And so then I went back to the district and said, I have this idea. What do you think? And our
And SCURA will pay for the poster printing.
They'll pay for everything. I said, look, I just need to design the poster. They're going to pay for it. What do you think? And our superintendent said that would be great. And then I talked to Miguel Gauthier, who's the facilities guy, and he said, okay, I guess I'll hang them. So hopefully in the next couple of months we'll have a poster. I think it's going to be 11 by 17 above every recycling bin in the entire district. And I kind of hope that it can move out into the city buildings or other places as well, so that it tells you what to put in the recycling bin, and maybe more importantly, what not to put in the recycling bin. And then additionally, a pet peeve of mine is we have Board of Ed meetings at Science and Tech, and we have hiring committees or different things at central office. And a lot of times we provide water bottles and we recycle them, which is great, but we don't have a place to put them in a garbage can with a little hole to save the 5 cents. So I think SCURA is going to help us out and provide
Nice.
cans. So instead of us buying water and then giving it to the people and then we lose our 5 cents, we should be able to retain the 5 cents, which isn't a lot of money, but to me, save
There's
it.
no point giving it away.
No, and we have Board of Ed meetings every 2 weeks, and we go through a bunch of waters. We're all thirsty apparently. So that's a newer thing that I'm hoping will come in the next month or two, about recycling, at least in our district. And if anybody's interested, at Nathan Hale School, I took a tour a little while ago. They did some neat things. They did projects with garbage or recycled products, and they had different statues and things hanging up and on tables. So that was kind of neat. it's nice that it went from recycled product to a project, but then it's probably going to go to garbage next. But hey,
But
we
yeah.
reused a little.
Yeah, it was a learning experience
Absolutely.
in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Well, when a couple years ago, when we were thinking about, the bag, the pay to throw
Yep.
stuff, one thing that did come out when we started to look at what we could recycle, I think many of us saw that we're throwing things in our recycle bin that we shouldn't be.
Sure.
That was one of the shockers, that it really isn't helpful to
No.
put things in there that aren't really recyclable.
And one of the reasons to recycle properly is when we started pay-as-you-throw, or we were considering pay-as-you-throw 2 years ago, we were getting a rebate from SCURA of $5 per ton for our recycling. So it behooved us to recycle, even if we were, recycling wrong, we still got paid. Nice. That was nice. Unfortunately, the markets in China and Indonesia and India, different places, they all collapsed. And so we are going to be paying for our recyclings. Luckily, we have SCURA, and in 2019, their contract with Willie Waste was up. We renegotiated, and unfortunately, that comes in at $70 a ton that we're paying for recycling. SCURA was nice enough to pay for that for 2019 through 2020, and they actually agreed to pay for it through 2020 and 2021. And their hope is that after that time, the markets will come back and they'll be able to lower the price again.
Which they may or may not.
They may or may not. So the good thing is they picked up the $70 cost, but we went from -$5 to zero, which is still good, but it's not -5. So it behooves us now, especially since, although we're not paying anything, that we do it the right way. Because we do pay for garbage, and I think that's going to go up a little bit, but I believe we have the lowest per ton cost for garbage in the state. Just don't tell anybody.
Yes, SCURA has been kind of protecting us from some of the impacts that other places are having.
They have, and they've been fantastic. First of all, personally, they've been really helpful to get me anything I need. They also do the hazardous waste pickup each year. I think there's 10 or 12 of those, and actually this year it's in New London. It'll be at the high school. It's on a Saturday. It's either May 2nd or 3rd. I think it's the 3rd. I'm not positive. But you can bring paper, which isn't hazardous, but they'll shred it for you, paint, oils. I think they'll pick up your drugs, maybe expired medications and different things. So this year it'll be at New London, and each year it kind of rotates around. But you can go to any of them. So if you see a SCURA sign and it's at Stonington, for example, and you're in New London, you can still go to those. It doesn't matter which town, because SCURA is 12 towns, and they represent all of those towns together.
And those are really useful if you're cleaning out your basement.
They are.
You have oil-based paint or...
But I would say too, don't forget, we have places to get rid of things all the time in New London. It's a little hard to get around sometimes, but our transfer station will take oil and latex paint. You can drop off your medications at the police station. They've got a little thing to put them in. And then your plastic wraps, plastic bags, or wrappers around water bottles or whatever, you can bring those to Stop and Shop, or you can bring those to ShopRite. And you can also bring them to Target in Waterford, and there's places.
So there are a few more places than there used to be. It used to be only ShopRite.
Yeah, and I really wish there were more of those, because what they do is they take all the plastics and they melt it down and make the wood. It's not wood, but whatever they make fake decks out of.
Oh yeah,
The wood.
Yeah. I can only think of the brand names.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what it's called, but they melt those down, and then they make.
And they make outdoor furniture out of that too.
Absolutely.
Which costs a fortune.
It does.
That does kind of make me crazy.
But yeah, it is what it is. But if we can take that out of our garbage, then we're not paying for it.
Right, and it might get turned into something useful, because more and more decks are being built using that plastic wood.
And I used the line when I was doing the solid waste management task force a lot. We can choose to pay $58 a ton or not. If we choose to pay $58 a ton, great. Just put it all in the garbage. It doesn't matter. But I think some of us, not everybody, tries. to recycle. Um, I did I think every person I talked to said I recycle everything. And my answer always was, well, someone's not.
Yeah. No, we have a pretty poor recycling rate. But I do, on trash day around our neighborhood, there are some houses that have their big green bins full every week.
Yes, they do.
And I don't even know how that happens.
You know, we're a family of 5. We're down to 3 now because 2 are in college. And we actually had a party when my wife retired, and I don't think we filled our entire garbage cart. They're 96 gallons, so I don't know. I mean, I guess if our kids were younger and they were in diapers, I'd probably have a bag of diapers. I don't know what.
96 gallons worth. It seems like a lot for one family.
It does. I mean, and our kids are teenagers. They eat a lot now. But still, I don't know.
Yeah. There are some mysteries.
There are. And I know some people put their sticks, they put their leaves, they put lawn chairs in there. So I don't think the garbage cans are actually full with 96 gallons, but you shove something in there and then there's a lot of air pockets and stuff like that. And people put weird things in there. Car batteries also can bring those to the transfer station at no cost.
Yeah, things like old appliances, mattresses.
Yep. All electronics, even earpieces, hearing aids, up to TVs, you name it. You can bring motor oil, you can bring cooking oil. They go in different places, so if you put them in the wrong one, it will ruin the other one. So make sure you ask. But you can bring it in and just pour it in, and it'll take care of it.
They take batteries too, right? Of
batteries.
all kinds, from little...
Yeah, actually, hearing aid batteries up to car batteries. Some of the things there's a small fee for, but most of the things they'll take from you and dispose of properly versus our garbage. And it gets back to, again, we can pay $58 a ton, or you can drive to the transfer station and dispose of it for free. The issue there is our transfer station hours aren't very good. People work. It's crazy, I know. But we have to have better hours. And when I put together the report that our committee read to council or presented to council, one of it was you have to reevaluate the transfer station hours because they're not conducive to most humans.
No, they're not. I mean, they're open 1 or occasionally 2 Saturdays a month.
Yeah.
And that isn't enough.
No, and I think it's 7 to 2. I think there's, I'm not positive the hours, but they're not, it doesn't work, to be blunt. And we have to be better to allow us, New London, to succeed.
Well, I have to say very often, like, just those maintenance type things, public works, it's hard to get people to buy into, getting their taxes raised for that. Education, I'm sure you hear the same kind of thing. And these are things that really do improve quality of life in the long run. But it's sometimes a harder sell than the fire department and the police department, which is too bad.
Yeah, and no one wants their taxes raised. I don't think.
No. I live to.
Yeah, I don't think any of us live to have that happen. And we just put our budget forward, or we voted. The Board of Ed voted to move our budget forward. I don't think we've given it to the mayor yet. He's seen it. We have to do that by March 15th, and we're asking for approximately $1.2 million more in our budget, which is a 2.7 increase in our budget year over year. For the city portion, it's a 5.67 increase over what we asked for the previous year. One of the issues we struggle with is we have a lot of contracts that we increase. We have healthcare coverage, which increases. So when you start your budget process and you're hypothetically already at negative $1 million, where do you go? You either have to ask for it or you have to cut. And that's the tough part. And I don't know if anybody wants to really cut the schools. You can argue we're not very successful, and I think that's an easy argument to make. But the most valuable piece of a city, I think, is your school district. That's why people move to different places, and we have to continue moving it forward and building it. And that's a struggle. And to get the community buy-in, we have to see more positive things happening, and then I think we'll have more positive results. But it's a village. It's a community. It's not just us versus the city or that type of thing.
Well, when I was on the Board of Ed a decade ago, one of the things that was most shocking to me when it came to the budget process is how little of that is discretionary. You really, I mean, people say, oh, the budget is so big, but it's probably, I don't think it's more than 10% that you can really play around with. So much of it is fixed costs and contractual obligations that you really can't cut.
And that's the problem. So what I think every Board of Ed member would say is we're fully expecting the mayor to come back and say you need to cut this amount. I think that's what we're expecting, and I think that's been the process for a long time. And then you have to go, okay, what programs are we going to cut? Because we actually didn't add any new people. And so that's the struggle. But I think we also have to be rational and say we're asking the city to contribute $1.2 million more. We both live there, Rana.
We do. But I think, in terms of our being a magnet district, mm-hmm. we have to maintain the school buildings and the school programs to a level that we can attract people from out of district. And if we try to do everything on the cheap, we're just not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things for our district, I'm on the school maintenance and building committee, so I work with the different building projects that are going on. And one of the things I see as a huge asset is we're May 4th, 2020, we're supposed to have shovel in the ground for our new high school campus. And to attract people to our district, yes, you need very solid programs, but you also need a building.
Yes.
Our middle daughter graduated high school last year in June 2019. Yeah, I forgot what year it was. 2019, and I think it's a neat tradition. The seniors go to Winthrop and Harbor and Jennings, and they walk through the schools in their cap and gowns, and they give high fives, and they say hi to the kids. And my kids went to Isaac, and then they went to the high school, and they didn't go to the elementary schools here. And my daughter said that, I didn't realize how terrible our high school was because she hadn't seen the other schools. And it was an eye-opening experience. And so hopefully, while we're building new schools, that will be an asset for us. And maybe that will eliminate some of those maintenance costs, at least for a few years, because, it should work. Like when you buy a new car, you shouldn't have to be fixing things for a period of time. But that's a huge project. The high school's $108 million. The Benny Dover, which is the middle school project, is a $50 million project. But we have to build the schools and build facilities to attract kids as well. And obviously I know our staff is probably the most important thing. If we have good teachers, we're going to have a great foundation to build from, but they have to have a place to go that they're comfortable in and they want to stay. And I mean, it's all a challenge. Yeah,
the staff don't want to be in buildings that are falling apart either.
No, I don't think so. We could poll them, but I'm thinking the answer is no.
And the pay scale is probably likely a little lower than in many surrounding districts.
Yep.
So, I mean, they can love New London, but if the conditions they're working in are really harsh, it's hard to be competitive.
I think it takes. I mean, you and I live here.
Yeah.
I lived in Ledyard before. I grew up in Old Lyme. I lived in Ohio for a period of time during college and in New York as well. But it takes a special person to come and work in a city school, New Haven, Hartford, or wherever, and you have to love kids, and you have to be dedicated, and you have to understand we're not just one type of population.
Right.
It's a melting pot, and we're culturally massively different.
We are. In fact, a lot of us, like I'm from Philadelphia originally, so I think many people who end up in New London are actually people who came from bigger cities and kind of like that, like city feel, even though we don't have much population compared to a real city.
Well, wait till we do the census. We'll have way more population. Maybe.
Maybe. Well, one nice development, by the way, is that Nick and Karen Fisher have started doing a public access show.
Oh, okay.
That's I think it's every other week before this one, so it's 6:30.
Okay.
Half hour, 6:30 every other Tuesday night.
Is that just for the census, or is that going to continue?
I don't know if it's going to continue or not, but
It is from now until the end of July. It's every Tuesday, 6 to 6:30.
oh, thank you, Mary Jane.
They may not have heard that. You may want to repeat it.
Okay, okay. We are told by the public access staff that the show is on 6 to 6:30 every Tuesday from now over the next few months. So yeah, they're doing a great job of trying to get the word out about the census.
For those who don't know, Nick and Karen Fisher they're the show. They're running the census.
They are.
And actually, I like what our mayor said about why it's so important to get everybody counted. And it was simple. It was basically just one sentence, and it was the numbers we come up with for this census are what we're going to have to live with for 10 years. And so our funding from the federal government depends upon how many people we have. And I know people have a fear of reporting because they think someone's going to follow you or whatever their fear may be, irrational or irrational. It's a fear. But everything's essentially anonymous in terms of gathering information. If someone comes to your door, they're going to ask you the questions, and pretty much that's it. And I think there's 10 questions, maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know that starting soon, mid-March, you can go online and just fill it out.
This is the first time I believe it's been online.
No one will knock on your door if you do that.
That's what I'm hoping. So I'm going to fill it out the first day, and then
Me too.
I don't have to check the doorbell or anything.
I did think about like one of those jobs because I worked for 12 years as a home visitor for Head Start, and especially at the beginning of the year when we're enrolling, people would just like call in with their name and their child's name and date of birth, and sometimes if they didn't have a reliable phone number, we'd have like these referral cards and we'd just do these knocking on people's doors. So I used to really like that part of it. So I thought, well, the census kind of sounds like that.
It's just it's a political campaign. If you knock on doors, except you probably know who they are. I have to say, so I got elected back in November, and we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and someone said, "What did you like about it?" The election part. And I said, I think I like knocking on people's doors the most because you had no idea what to expect, and some interesting conversations, some really out there conversations, some really good conversations. You get to meet lots of people. You ran too. I don't know if you did.
I ran. I didn't knock on doors this past time so much, but in the past I have, and I always kind of dread knocking on doors because I'm not really the most sociable person ever. But once I start, it's like sometimes it's really fun.
I found it to be the best. To be honest with you, the best way to get to know your city and the people in it is you go knocking door to door. And we have 3 districts in New London. I did all 3 districts. Maybe 1,500 doors, which isn't everybody. As you drive around more, you go, I miss that neighborhood. But
that's a pretty good showing, though.
I had a lot of fun. I would say the first time I went, I was scared out of my mind because you don't know what people are going to say to you. But it was fun, and I got to meet some new people who still contact me. There's a lady down the road who I met, and she still writes to me on the Board of Ed about her kids, and it was a lot of fun. So I enjoyed that part. So you should do it next time.
Oh, I don't know. I think my days of running might be over. I really like what I'm doing. A friend of mine, people text me with like planning and zoning questions. It's like, okay, I go to the regulations, I go to the plan of conservation and development. It's, I don't know, it's a little more low key.
A little relaxing.
It
Although
is.
you get some controversial stuff sometimes, don't you?
Or a
little heated.
It can be somewhat heated, but and I don't mind being the contrary voter either.
No, it's
sometimes.
Sometimes you have to be. The interesting thing I think with politics or being on a committee is you'll get the minutes and it'll say 7-1, whatever
Yeah.
the numbers are, and you have no idea why that person voted no. I mean, it could be as simple as wasn't here the previous meeting, so I don't have all the information, or I was really against this. It doesn't. You have no idea.
And sometimes it does come out in the minutes, but sometimes it doesn't. And if I vote in a contrary way, usually I will try to make a statement.
That's what I do too.
But you don't always know what it's going to be. And the funny thing is, I find, at least if the votes are 5-2, the person I'm agreeing with, it isn't like there are two of us who are in cahoots.
No, it's a different reason.
It's always someone different. And speaking of odd votes, in a way, on City Council recently, we were talking a little bit about the budget and the non-lapsing fund just passed after
Yay.
some
Like a decade.
after a few cycles of failing, and I saw that the vote was, I think, 5-1.
Right.
One person was absent, and I thought, who voted against?
So did you find out?
I did find out, but it was the person who voted for it last time around.
So John Sadie voted against it. Curtis
Yeah.
Goodwin wasn't there. I think he was out of town.
And I think he was in favor of
He was.
it.
Yeah, he was
but
out
not
of town.
there.
So do you know why John didn't vote for it?
I think he wanted it to be more liberal than it was.
Yes. So there's a part.
This is a funny city.
It is. So there's a part in the non-lapsing fund where the Board of Ed has to provide a capital improvement plan, and then what Regina Mosley, who's the Board of Ed president, and they asked her what she thought, and she said, "I'd like a date." And so what it was is once we have our audit from it's a city and Board of Ed audit comes together. Once we have the audit, it triggers us to write a letter to the city to ask us to keep our funds. And we basically have 30 days to do that. And John wanted us to have kind of an unlimited amount of time.
Yeah, that's...
And he's literally said, I'm not going to vote for this because I think you should have asked for more.
Well, the last time around, it was surprising that he was, I don't know if he was the sole supporter on
may have
council, but he might have been a year ago.
Yeah, but it gets back to you don't know why.
And I thought, my first thought was, well, it couldn't have been John Satterley because he's the city
for it.
council who's been supportive of the idea for years.
Sure.
So
And it's a really good thing. I think people have been trying to do it. I'm being sarcastic, but I think it's been probably a decade that they've come up with different versions. And the process kind of worked like this. I actually wrote my own, which I thought was far superior, but I lost. And then the executive committee on the Board of Ed, which is myself, Jeff Hart, and Regina Mosley, we kind of knocked it down to a shorter version. It went to the mayor. He wrote his own. City council wrote their own. Then they came up with a non-lapsing fund that everybody felt was acceptable, including David McBride, who's the finance guy for the city, and Rob Funk, who's the finance person for the Board of Education. And I think it's a good step. What it allows us to do is at the end of the year, if there's extra money and after our audit's completed, we can keep up to 2% of the entire budget. So I think it's $400,000 a year that we could keep. I don't think we'll ever keep that much. I think this year it's going to come out to $31,000, but it's still something that we can set aside. And part of the stipulations is that it has to be spent on building maintenance or some sort of building-related function type of thing, which is good because it's our responsibility right now as a Board of Ed to repair our buildings, even though the city owns them. That's a sore spot, but I think we're going to be working on that. At our last Board of Ed budget meeting, David McBride from Finance and Mayor Pastor were there, and they talked about trying to get us on the same schedule for capital improvement plans, and maybe we could work out some of the more expensive items where they could fall on the city side versus on the Board of Ed side. So that's a start. So I asked for a calendar. Tell me when you start meeting. I'm waiting for my calendar. It's only been a week, though.
Yeah. I have to admit, I think if I were on the Board of Ed, I would, at times take personally the assumption that Board of Ed members need to be overseen in order to be responsible.
Sure.
Because
Well, we
I don't
do.
think the I don't think the evidence supports that department is less responsible than any other department in the city.
It's probably not. It's just the way, you know how it works. I mean, city council gets a number.
Right, they don't have control,
They have
and that's
control.
part of it.
Yeah, and so And that's why we have the superintendent to take care of us, and the mayor takes care of everything else. But they literally get a big fat number and say, yep, but they can't tell you where you spend it, that type of thing. So I think that's kind of where...
I think that is part of it. But I've looked at budget numbers, and it's like some of the other departments, if you look at how much their expenditures have gone up over the last decade,
Sure.
are much more than the Board of Ed expenditures have.
I would tend to agree. And the hardest part, I think, is that insurance. That I think we anticipated like 8%. I wasn't on the board the previous year.
And it was 11
It was
or 12.
11. And so then what do you do?
At a certain point, you just have to, pull from other things. And what year was it? About 3 or 4 years ago that the school maintenance went from being covered by Public Works to being covered by the Board of Ed, and the line item number was not transferred accordingly. And once again, I don't know if that was $500,000. I think it was about $500,000.
$832,000 that was essentially added to our budget that wasn't there before.
Yeah, and it was like an unfunded mandate.
Pretty much. And so let's just say if you were going to ask the city that year for another $800,000, then all of a sudden you had to add another $800,000 because you're moving this from here to here. That's a lot of ask.
It is a lot of ask, except that like the taxpayers are going to have to spend that $800,000.
It to me, I guess in a sense, it comes down to who do you want to make look like the bad guy. And so when the Board of Ed maybe in that year, whatever, said, I need $1.6 million when it could have been $800,000 because you moved here and here. But no, it all comes from the same place. And, I feel badly doing the garbage committee. I mean, Public Works seems to be the one that we cut and cut and cut. And all of us need Public Works. Maybe not this year. We don't have any snow. But
we were kind of lucking out on the snow part of it.
Absolutely.
But, when I started getting involved with, Riverside Park, what was that, about 10 or 11 years ago, and, we had to deal with Public Works, of course, and at the time, I think Dave DeNoia had 2 departments under him, and then every time a different department head leaves, it's put on his plate again, so that he has all 5 departments under him now, and I'm sure, some of the work just filters downwards.
Sure.
It's got to, but I was struck when I was reading the city budget how, I know you went to the forums, how for the police and the fire, it's like, let's give these departments what they need to do a great job. And Public Works was all about, well...
What can we cut?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can we cut without messing services up too badly?
Yeah. I feel like Public Works, most of us put out garbage. A lot of us drive on the roads. If we don't, we maybe ride a bike or we walk. And all those things are public. We maybe use a park. Yeah. And it was cut. And the mayor says it best, I think, where we don't even have a bench because we've cut the bench. There's no one left. And it's tough. And how do you solve that? I don't know. You need more income, I guess, which is taxes.
Yeah. And, well, I know a lot of people have pointed to, can Connecticut find ways to regionalize? It'll help because, Connecticut doesn't have any really big cities, so all the small cities are surrounded by more affluent suburbs that are externalizing some of their safety net services.
Sure.
So if we can figure out a way to make it more equitable, it might help everyone.
I would love to be, I think regionalization of certain things would be a great thing. The hard part is convincing people to give up their little fiefdom or whatever you want to call it.
169 towns.
Yeah, we don't need 169 of certain things.
No, we don't. Well, okay, we have 5 minutes left.
Okay, I'm here.
So you're here. And just for the last 5 minutes, I wanted you to let people know how they can get involved, get their voices heard within the school system.
So we meet every other week for the Board of Education. We meet at the Science and Tech Magnet High School it's an auditorium type of area. So we have a meeting Thursday and then 2 Thursdays from now. And before that meeting, I'm chair of the Facilities and Program Design. We meet at 6. The Board of Ed meeting's at 7. There's public comment for both of them. It's 3 minutes. I don't think I've ever had public comment for the committee I chair. I'm hoping someday. And the Board of Ed, there's not a lot of public comment, but that's the time. And I'm usually there early. You can find me. I know some people don't feel comfortable coming to a little round table with a little microphone in front of a bunch of people. We're not that scary. Come and talk.
And actually, you're much more likely to get your voice heard than like posting negative things on Facebook,
Absolutely.
for example.
Kinda. I said I'm not sure if you were at the debate, and one of the questions was about people banging.
Oh yeah, I think I was at that one.
Yeah, they're banging on the doors of central office complaining about this or that, and I disagreed. I said, no, I think they're banging on the doors of social media. And the example I used is after the incidences that came to light from Benny
right.
Dover, there were 2 people that came to speak to the Board of Ed while there were hundreds of comments on Facebook. Nothing's going to get done on social media. You get out there and talk to people individually, or come to a meeting, or write an email. I think that's the only way you're going to get change. And I think that applies for council, and probably for the mayor too. I mean, make a meeting. We're all local. We all pay taxes. And I think all of us, every person who's elected, wants the best for their city. It may not feel like that sometimes, but I think we all do. And we want to move New London forward. I'm on the Board of Ed. I want to move the district forward. There's other committees you can be on. There's always hiring committees. They're looking for parents or different groups of people who to fill those out. There's the curriculum committee. I think these are full now. There's the finance committee, and then every now and then we have like an ad hoc committee to study something.
And they're usually looking for at least a certain amount of community representation.
Yeah, each committee has their representation. So I think on there's a policy committee. I think there's a teacher and there's an administrator also, depending upon the committee. For the hiring committees, usually it's a Board of Ed member, an administrator, a parent. We try to get a student as well, depending upon the committee. So I was on the athletic director hiring committee, so we had a student, and that was nice. Other ones, they're not as involved. We have HR coming up, HR director coming up, and we also have more interviews for the high school campus director, which we haven't hired. We've tried 3 times and haven't found someone. I hope we find someone now. It's incredibly important we have someone permanently stationed at the high school to help and direct and move the district forward.
Well, in the last minute, what is the status of North Campus, speaking of the high school? Can you do it in 1 minute?
Of the buildings or the whole North Campus?
I was thinking of the buildings, but...
Yeah, so the North Campus, the building project made it through bidding, or made it to bidding. On February 20th, we got our letter from the state, which allowed us to go to bid. So between now and end of March, we're kind of at a lull while people look at documents and place bids. And then in April, we'll decide on who we're going to go with to actually build the buildings. May 4th is the day that there should be an official shovel in the ground. And then I think it's May 10th. There's going to be some sort of groundbreaking. And Martha Baduccio, who a lot of people know in town, it's her birthday, and I told her I'd bring her a cake. So
come to that May 4th.
Yeah, May 4th. Although David McBride, who's one of his relatives, works for Dairy Queen, he said I'd bring an ice cream one, and I said I think it's going to melt. We'll go with a regular cake.
Probably. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Bryan. Next week, our guest will be Peter Millman, and he's going to talk about community choice aggregation for local energy.
Cool.
So, which is a subject I know nothing about
Me either,
yet.
so I won't be here.
But we'll have it on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, as well because as well as in our regular time slot. So. Thanks, Bryan.
Thanks for having me
again,
Rana.
Good luck on the Board of Ed moving forward, and we'll see the rest of you next week.